previously on the Trey King Show.
Investigators trying to figure out what killed a woman who was visiting her husband in prison. She died back on November 13th at Mule Creek State Prison in Ione.
A few moments later.
4 months after a woman died while visiting an inmate at Mule Creek State Prison, we've learned her death is now deemed a homicide.
She was strangled.
A few moments later.
Another woman was also murdered during a visit with her husband at the same prison a few months before that. Both deadly incidents taking place at the Mule Creek State Prison in Ione.
Thomas's husband, 48-year-old Anthony Curry, is charged with her murder. He's accused of strangling Thomas during a conjugal visit at Mule Creek State Prison. Court records show Curry was already serving time in prison for a conviction of attempted murder following the 1999 shooting of his 19-year-old girlfriend at the time.
Yo, YouTube, what's going on? Trey back again to hit y'all another video. Hope y'all having a very great day. Hope y'all having a very great week. My day is going absolutely marvelous. Big shout out to all the channel members and subscribers to Trey King Show family. And much love to each and every last one of you all. And you all, we have an update to a story I did last week out of California by way of Ione. And big shout out to everybody in the great city of California. Everybody inside the great city of Ione. Now, before I start the story, I want to send a special thank you out to my channel members and also to my subscribers for sending me this story. And also, keep these stories coming. And as you all may know, today is what? Yes, today is Freaky Friday. Now, one thing I want to make clear to everybody that's watching this video, when I speak on these stories, I'm just giving my opinion. You do not have to take my advice, because some people that watch me act like I am forcing them to take my advice, when really, you are the one clicking on my video. So you cannot get mad at me and try to go off on me in the comment section just because you disagree with something I say, because I'm not going to say everything the way you want me to say it. And also, more than anything, I am not perfect. It's just the way I feel. As in the case of this story right here, well, we have a 47-year-old woman named Tanya Thomas who was murdered by her husband, 48 years old, Anthony Curry, who was serving a life sentence for attempted second-degree murder. Now, this story is really troubling, but it's going to also show you and illustrate to you what I told y'all last week is this right here, is that you cannot change people. Men can't change women, neither more can a woman change a man. People have to want to change for themselves. So let's repeat that. People have to want to change for themselves, because you got to know when it's time to let somebody go. I mean, it's one thing to love somebody, but it's another thing to be blinded by that love. You do not want to be blinded by that love. So please, family, make sure you all remember that. Now, Tanya Thomas and Anthony Curry knew each other before Anthony Curry went to prison. Now, Tanya Thomas and also Anthony Curry have a son together, a 25-year-old son who's in the Air Force. And sir, I am sorry for your loss, but I know one thing. Your mom is looking down on you, and she is very proud of you for keep going, keep persevering. And I salute you for staying steadfast and also keeping your head up, trying to do something with your life. And now back to the story. One thing I want to say also, I appreciate Tanya Thomas' cousin coming out with the info, because that's how we have the story. And we would have never known about this whole situation if her cousin did not speak out. So to the cousin, thank you very much for coming out and speaking on your cousin's behalf. Now, I want to ask you all a question before we dig deep into this video. Why do you think that this story was hidden from the public? It was not made public knowledge that Tanya Thomas had got murdered at Mule Creek State Prison. You would think if somebody get murdered, especially at a prison, that it will be on the news. But I looked and checked everywhere, and I could not find any story, any news article on this situation. So let me ask you all this, family. Why did the state of California Department of Correction, that is, keep this a secret from the public? So let me ask you a question, family. Do you think the public should have been made aware of this death that took place with Tanya Thomas that occurred July the 1st last year? Because maybe that would have stopped Stephanie Dowles from going to this prison, seeing her husband, 54-year-old David Brinson, who killed Stephanie Dowles the same way Tanya Thomas got killed by Anthony Curry.
4 months after a woman died while visiting an inmate at Mule Creek State Prison, we've learned her death is now deemed a homicide.
She was strangled.
Thomas's husband, 48-year-old Anthony Curry, is charged with her murder. He's accused of strangling Thomas during a conjugal visit at Mule Creek State Prison.
Both of these women got strangled to death, but the cousin describes Tanya Thomas as a loving, kind, caring person. And she also was battling lupus. Listen to this.
As Thomas spent more than half her life battling lupus.
So here we have, family, a woman who's battling lupus, a woman who already has a medical condition, but at the same time, she's trying to be there for somebody else. Think about that. They go to show you that this woman really cared about Anthony Curry. I don't know if it's because they had a son together or she thought maybe she could change him and they would have a future together. But as the story play out, you will hear how Anthony Curry tried to string her on and ultimately lied to her.
Court records show Curry was already serving time in prison for a conviction of attempted murder following the 1999 shooting of his 19-year-old girlfriend at the time.
So here we have a man who was already serving a life sentence for attempted second-degree murder for shooting his girlfriend in the head. And all this was back in 99. Now, back in 1999, while this exact moment took place, this event took place, Tanya Thomas was in the hospital in labor with Anthony Curry child.
He shot his 19-year-old girlfriend, Danita Brown, I believe that's her name. He shot her in the head and dumped her body at a construction site and left her for dead. She survived because of Good Samaritans that found her the very next day. But Tanya was in labor when all of this happened.
So they're going to show you way back then that Anthony Curry did not give a damn about Tanya Thomas because he's somewhere else with another female who's 19 years old, while Tanya Thomas, his baby mama, is at the hospital in labor with his child. The same child I told you about earlier in the video, who happened to be 25 years old in the Air Force. That's a damn shame right there.
She definitely did not let us know that they got married and that they were intimately involved the past few years.
So as you heard the cousin say, family, Tanya Thomas and Anthony Curry got married. And the family did not even know that Tanya Thomas got married because most likely Tanya Thomas' family would not have approved of that marriage. So let me ask you this, family. If your family member wanted to marry somebody in prison that's serving a life sentence for attempted murder, or in the case of Stephanie Downs, for murder, would you approve of your family member marrying that person? I know me personally, I would tell them to be careful, and then I would say, hell no, tread lightly, as in the case of these stories, because you got to understand, past behavior is a great indicator of what? Future behavior. And you got to understand this also, like I told you all, just because a person is telling you all these sweet nothings and letters on the phone calls and also on visits, that does not mean that they really love you. And also, if they're able to get out, that does not mean that they're going to do you right when they get out. You got to be very cautious when you're dealing with these type of people. And when I said that last week, evidently, I must have triggered a few jailbirds because a few of them got mad at me and tried to go off on me as if I really give a damn. But let's continue with the story.
He's supposed to get out on parole in January 2024. We had no idea that they were planning on living a life together.
And as you heard Tanya Thomas' cousin say, Anthony Curry was making all these promises that when he made parole last year in January, they was going to get out and they was going to start up where they left off at years ago, even though, once again, he was not at the hospital while she was giving birth to their son. And where was he at? He was out there with another female, 19 years old, that he shot in the head and tried to kill this woman. That's a damn shame right there. And you all think that really you can change somebody. You cannot change people. And like I said earlier in the video, some of you all think that you can change these people, but at the same time, like I always say, people have to want to change. But let's continue.
It's my understanding that he told her to wait for him because he was up for another parole hearing in January 2025. However, Ton learned that he really was not up for parole because if you look it up in the system, it's public information. He had the date of 2027 for the next parole hearing. And
now in closing, as you heard Tanya Thomas' cousin say, this is when the lies started and also when the deception started because he started lying to Tanya Thomas about his parole date. Now remember, he was honest about the first parole date, which was supposed to take place January of last year. He was honest about that. But he got denied, just like most people when they go up for parole, especially for murder charges. Because you got to understand, the people's family, the victim's family that is, come to these parole hearings and also what they say carry a lot of weight. And quite naturally, if you have the victim's family in there and they don't want you to get out and they speaking against you, you're going to get denied. You can go for parole 3, 4, 5 times and guess what? You still will get denied. But evidently, Tanya Thomas did not know that because most likely she never been in trouble in her life. I'm just making a point. Now, he told Tanya Thomas that he was going up for parole the very next year. But lo and behold, guess what? That was a lie. So Tanya Thomas, being who she is, she looks on the Department of California website, Department of Correction that is, and noticed that Anthony Curry parole date was not until 2027 when he was going up for parole again. So quite naturally, you're going to get mad. Now remember, you're dealing with somebody that's in prison for attempted second-degree murder. So the family think that Tanya Thomas was trying to cut things off with Anthony Curry, and that's the reason why he ended up killing her. Because remember, he was already serving a life sentence for attempted second-degree murder with an additional 30 years for carjacking. So this man had nothing to lose, just like David Brinson, who was already serving 4 consecutive life sentences with no possibility of parole. That means he have natural life. And when you have natural life, guess what? That means you're going to die there. And just because you have a life sentence, that does not mean that you're going to serve life in prison. That means anything up to life. Whenever the parole board want to let you out, or if the president or if the governor want to grant you a pardon, that's how you will get out. But it's sad that this man who happened to share a child with Tanya Thomas tried to string this woman along and ultimately took her life when Tanya Thomas found out the truth. That's a damn shame. And this is why I tell you, you got to be careful with the people you let come into your life and also the people you align yourself with. And remember this also, just because somebody was away 20, 30 years ago, that does not mean they are going to be that way today. Anyway, you all let me know what you think about this story. If there's anything I may have missed or misinformed, which is not my true intent, please let me know in the comment section, or you can email me. We can talk about it more there. If you like the video, push that like button. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Become a channel member. Also, share the video with your family and friends. Till next time, you all stay blessed and choose your mate wisely. The word for the day is be patient and let God send someone to you. And guess what? If God don't send you nobody, be by yourself until then. Anyway, you all take care. Have a great weekend. And thank you all for the love and support. And also thank you for tuning in. And guess what? I'm out.